Hi, everyone. All right, I'm getting the sign that our recording is officially up and running, so I am going to take that as my mark to kick things off today. Welcome to Taproot Foundation's webinar, Build Your Resume by Donating Time and Talents to Nonprofits. We're really grateful for you all joining us here today. I know many of you are in the middle of your work days, and we don't take it for granted that you're carving out time in your busy schedules to come and join us and learn more about how you can donate your skills and donate your time to assist nonprofit causes. It really is an incredible gesture of generosity, and we definitely don't take that for granted. So appreciate you all spending this time with us. We have some really great content in store for today, and it's not just going to be me sharing it. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off our introductions, and then I want to make sure that my colleague Josh, who's on the line with us today, also has a chance to introduce himself as well. My name is Kimberly Swartz. You can call me Kim. I go by she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm Taproot Senior Director of Community Engagement, which means I have this really lovely job of designing the programs and experiences that bring volunteers like you all together with nonprofits, small businesses, and other community partners for really impactful pro bono and volunteer partnerships. So with that, I'll pass it over to Josh Grohl.
Hi, everyone. I'm Josh. My official title here is Nonprofit Success Coach. So I actually work very closely with nonprofits who are coming into our online program, Taproot Plus, really to get them prepared to start working with you all. So I'm helping to tee them up, doing a lot of consulting and participating in a lot of programs, also run by Kim, to get nonprofits ready to scope, secure, and manage skilled volunteer support. So I know our online platform in and out, and I can handle questions from both volunteers and nonprofits. So I'm going to be co-presenting with Kim today a little bit later in the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Josh. And something that I would encourage all of you on the line to really make use of Josh for is he's the one at Taproot who is speaking to nonprofits, consulting with them day in, day out. And so if you're looking for advice, or if you're looking for who's got the finger on the pulse of nonprofit needs, best practices for tailoring your application so that a nonprofit sees yours and is like, yes, this is the partner for me, or tips on managing your partnerships with nonprofits, Josh is really your person. So definitely make full use of him during this call, and I'm sure the many connections and conversations that'll happen after this webinar as well. So with that, I want to run through just a few quick logistics notes before we officially dive into our content. As I mentioned, this is webinar format, so please use that chat box to communicate with myself and Josh. We also have the wonderful Kristen Maiku on the line, who's Taproot's Marketing and Communications Associate. Thank you, Kristen, for introducing yourself. She's going to be answering questions throughout today's presentation in the chat box, and then she'll flag some of the more broad, far-reaching questions for Josh or myself to handle throughout the presentation or during the reserved Q&A time, which will fall at the very end of the presentation. So if you hear from someone from Taproot or you hear from Kristen in the box, definitely take notice. So thanks, Kristen, for doing that. And today we're going to be covering a really full agenda. I'll go through, of course, an introduction of who Taproot is. I know many of you, when you registered for this event, indicated you just wanted to learn some of the basics about who our nonprofit is, what our mission is all about, how to engage in our services. So we'll definitely make sure to touch on all of that. And the heart of our content is really going to be focused on two things. One, the really tangible benefits that come from donating your skills to social good causes. And then secondly, how you can begin participating in those donations of professional expertise through Taproot. And so one other quick logistics note before I jump in. Unfortunately, due to another engagement, I do have to jump around that halfway mark, but we'll make sure that you have tons of great resources. You'll have Josh on the line, and you'll have my contact details in the follow-up from this event as well. But I will be sorry to miss the Q&A, but you'll be in very good hands with Josh. All right, so now that we're through with logistics, I want to move us into the official Taproot introduction. And while I'm going through this, please, if you haven't already introduced yourself in the chat box, go ahead and do so. So let us know where you're joining the call from, the skills that you're interested in giving back. And please don't be afraid to include your LinkedIn profile, or maybe if you have a personal website. Definitely, we encourage networking on these calls, and we encourage you all creating connections with one another. So use that space for professional introductions as well. And as you're doing that, I want to introduce you to our nonprofit. As you may know, Taproot is an organization that exists to support our fellow nonprofits. We were founded as a nonprofit back in 2001 with this knowledge that there's a massive resource gap present in the social sector, right? I'm sure you all have witnessed this, where organizations who may very well have solutions to our world's most pressing societal challenges simply don't have the financial means or the staff capacity to carry out those missions to their fullest extent. And so what Taproot is trying to do is democratize access to these resources for nonprofits, regardless of their mission area, regardless of where they're based out of, regardless of their budget size, their staff size, or the years they've been in operations. And so you'll see our mission as it relates to resource equity here, but we're really trying to create those connections, create that access to resources through volunteer connections with the likes of all of the folks we have on the line with us today. So a little bit more information about Taproot for volunteers you'll find here on the slide. We've been doing this for over 20 years and are really out to build this pro bono movement outside of the legal space. Because I'm sure if you heard about skills-based volunteering or you heard Taproot refer to pro bono, maybe the first thing that jumped to mind is, oh, okay, well, that's only legal donations or that's only legal work. When in reality, Taproot's trying to create that spirit, that ethic of volunteerism across all of these different sectors of business because it's so well established in the legal space and it made so much societal impact on individuals, nonprofits, and governmental groups alike. Imagine the impact that we could collectively have if folks in the finance world or the advertising world or the HR world or product management. I've seen so many amazing skill sets come through the chat so far. Imagine if pro bono donations, skills-based volunteerism was built into those fields as well as a way to grow and develop throughout your career. And so that's what Taproot is envisioning, and that's what our programs really center around, getting nonprofits these resources while granting volunteers and professionals opportunities to stretch outside of their typical day-to-days and build their skills and build their cross-cultural connections as well. So you can see some impact stats here. To date, we've worked with 37,000 plus volunteers throughout our range of programming, delivering over 300 million in in-kind services to social good organizations across the United States, but also in regions around the world. And we have, over 22 issue areas represented across Taproot's programs. We're issue area agnostic, and so I can virtually guarantee that whatever specific social cause you're interested in donating your skills in support of, we'll be able to find a nonprofit or an organization working in a similar cause or that exact cause and help get you matched up. All right, so I'm going to move more so to the specifics of what is skills-based volunteerism, because I know this was a question that came up quite a few times in the registration form for the event, so I want to make sure we give this the time and space that it needs. So Taproot defines skills-based volunteering as a donation of someone's abilities, talents, networks, or resources to social good organizations. You might hear us refer to it as skilled volunteering or pro bono consulting. They really all have the same meaning. And As I mentioned before, skills-based volunteerism, it offers many benefits to both the nonprofit side of the equation and the volunteer side of the equation. For nonprofits, obviously working with skilled volunteers like you all fills experience gaps and gives them more time and tools to do the things that they are uniquely great at, right? And that our communities need them to be able to focus on. And so skills-based volunteering really adds to a nonprofit's capacity to serve its communities. Skills-based volunteering also builds lasting connections between the volunteer and the nonprofit that they support. While it's not 100% expected, so I can't put that 100% guarantee next to this, it is really common that, and I'm sure Josh will nod his head in agreement with me here, it is so common for us to hear stories and see testimonials from volunteers who have maybe connected with a nonprofit for just a single 1-hour consultation call, or maybe just a single project that was originally only supposed to last a month. And that volunteer has then gone on to become a board member of that nonprofit, or become a paid staff member, or just become a longtime volunteer because they're so bought in and sold on the work that that organization is doing. So when we say that this has the opportunity to build community, we really do mean it, and we've seen and experienced that many, many, many times over. And then, of course, impact. Obviously, that's going to be the core benefit here. You have the opportunity to provide long-term value to social good organizations beyond what could be possible if you donate a one-time $20 donation, or and you go and paint a wall for an hour. Both of those are extremely valuable acts of service in and of themselves, but by making use and by donating what you are uniquely great at, you have the opportunity to really make a unique and profound impact on an organization. And one thing that I'll shout out here is, Taproot, in partnership with CECP, I think originally back around 2010, and we've now updated the statistics several times over the years. We actually came out with the valuation of a pro bono hour of service. So how much does it mean you're donating each time you share an hour of your professional expertise with a nonprofit? And 2019 is the last updated figure, and it's around $195. Take into account that a Taproot, just standard pro bono project, so our average project is probably going to last around 30 hours of donated time. It can be over the course of many weeks, so I don't want anyone to get super scared that they're going to have to donate 30 hours to an organization in the next week or something. It takes place, 2-3 hours every week over the course of a few months. But let's just say 30 hours. So 30 hours times 195, you're talking about almost a $6,000 donation to a cause that you really care about. I know I personally am not in the place financially, my family's not in the place financially where I can make $6,000 donations to all of the causes that are really near and dear to my heart. But I am in the place where I can carve out time during the end of my work days or over the weekends to donate my skills to causes that I care about and feel that I really am making that impact alongside these really important social good causes. So just some food for thought as you're kind of examining the volunteerism and the giving choices that you have open to you. All right, so I want to keep us moving. A few things that I'd love for you to consider as we move through the presentation, because I've already touched on a few of them. Because Taproot's all about connecting you with the right opportunity based on your professional superpowers, based on what you're great at, based on what social causes are near and dear to your heart. And the third I would add to that is, what's the career move? What's the professional development benefit that you hope that volunteering can help you achieve? Because we want to be able to connect all three of those items for each of you through a participation in Taproot's programming. So just as a reminder, the 3 questions that I'd love for you to consider, and if you feel comfortable, please feel free to throw some of your reasons in the chat. So just to review again, what's your professional superpower? What social causes are near and dear to your heart? And what's the career move? What's the career development or career growth that you're hoping that volunteering might help you achieve? And keep in mind, we are recording this call, so maybe don't just say to get out of this job that I'm currently in, but but do feel free to openly share. Would love to hear people's reasonings. And I know Josh and I are both reading through what's coming in. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Charmaine. And you too, Ivy. Yeah, I know pro bono consulting, skills-based volunteerism is a really popular option for those who are considering career transitions, whether it's to a different sector or whether it's through to a different team or functional area, maybe within your same organization, and trying to examine, is this new way of using my skill set or using my perspective something that I find joy in? Or something that I am talented in. Skills-based volunteerism could be a great way to test drive some of those items. So really appreciate everyone who's taken the time to share, and please continue to do so, because I want to touch more on that benefits piece that we've started talking about. So obviously, this is not a comprehensive slide. Skills-based volunteerism has so many things that really are additive to your life. The fulfillment that comes from using your time and experience on a cause that you're uniquely passionate about, the education that comes from working with a nonprofit leader or nonprofit staff members who are so talented and passionate about a really pressing societal issue. I know I've learned so much from the nonprofits that I've consulted with and the nonprofits that I get the joy to work with on a daily basis here through Taproot. Just that education and edification of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't know about this thing that was affecting community members before, but now I'm so grateful that I do. And I'm so grateful that after this pro bono experience, I can continue to be an advocate and a voice for this issue. All of those are additional benefits. I'm sure other people who have experienced skills-based volunteering in the past can put some additional benefits in the chat too. But the 4 that I want to focus on for today's conversation are going to be supporting social causes, expanding your network, and then building your resume and strengthening your skills. So I will say that, over the past 3-4 years now, I don't think it's going to be a surprise for folks on the line to hear that community needs really have continued to increase, while funding and volunteer support for nonprofits has unfortunately been declining. This is due in part to many factors: economic challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as other reasons I'm sure we could all list, but wanted to provide a little bit more background context behind this. Giving USA is a really well-respected research body in the social space. They do an annual estimate of contributions from foundations and individuals and companies. They found that 2022 was one of the worst years in philanthropy history. Giving actually dropped around 11% after inflation, which is a really rare occurrence since the advent of Giving USA's annual tracking. Nonprofits are continuing to report difficulties with volunteer recruitment and engagement, with various nonprofit surveys and national surveys spotlighting the challenges that organizations are facing in finding hands-on and skills-based volunteer support, including board members. And community members, as I mentioned, they're reporting struggling with a lack of time, a lack of resources, or the ability to take time away from work in order to do any kind of volunteerism, or a lack of budget to give back financially, and are continuing to face COVID-19 pandemic stressors and uncertainty that their donations will make a difference in the long run. And then according to the National Center for Nonprofits and the Chronicle of Philanthropy, Nearly half of nonprofit CEOs who were surveyed in the mid-2022 said that recruiting volunteers was still a major problem, a major concern for their organization. So all of that is to say, this is the right time to get engaged. Taproot is a connector. And so if you've been waiting and doing your research and trying to find the right ways to make a difference, the right ways to start making these connections with causes, really vetted causes who are making a difference in communities around the US and in communities around the globe, this really is the time to consider getting involved. Nonprofits really are hungry for more resources. And so as we think about all of the benefits that come from donating your skills to organizations, I really just want to underline that at the end of the day, making a difference alongside a social cause that you care about is 100% the biggest benefit of volunteering your professional skills. The joy that comes from making a difference alongside people who are working every day to make our communities stronger, kinder, and more just is really hard to put a number against. It's really hard to stack up against, oh, well, I get to add this thing onto my resume. But as someone who has been on both sides of the pro bono coin, who's been a nonprofit beneficiary as well as the volunteer, I can absolutely attest to the fact that this idea of being a partner for social change is really the core benefit that comes out of these really special relationships. And we know that skills-based volunteerism works for nonprofits. In 2022, 84% of Taproot's nonprofit partners reported that the work of their Taproot volunteer directly led to the increased effectiveness of their mission. 84%. I mean, that's really, really stupendous. And I don't know who here, I think we had a few evaluation and data analytics people on the line. Taproot programs all receive a world-class NPS in terms of the perceived quality that nonprofits view the services they're receiving from their volunteer partners. And as I mentioned, sharing your professional skills with nonprofits is also financially valuable for them as well. So now that I've covered kind of the heartwarming part of this, I also want to touch on, the professional development benefits for you as the volunteer as well. So a few that I'll run through pretty quickly here. Obviously, it's a great way to expand your network in a few ways, geographically. If you're looking to build connections in a new city or a state or a country, or maybe a place where you moved from, but you still want to feel connected to that neighborhood, to that community, skills-based volunteerism could be a great way to make that happen, positionally, as well as thematically, leaning into those social issue passions. Volunteering also often involves interacting with people that you don't know, and it's an excellent opportunity to expand your network. And I know for any introverts on the line, volunteering is a really welcoming space and a really nurturing space as well, since you're responding to an invitation to give back. Taproot nonprofits put themselves out there and say, hey, these are the areas where we need support. And then you're invited to raise your hand to be that partner in support. And so take that as your invitation to start browsing through Taproot's marketplace as we go. I know Kristen has put a link up there, and Josh will be talking more about that a little bit later in the deck as well. So moving on to our next benefit here. Obviously, skills-based volunteering is a great way to build upon your resume. I know there's been some great studies put out into the field. I think the one that I have noted here is Deloitte back in 2019 conducted some really extensive research on hiring and what's really attractive to hiring managers for new roles. And, their impact survey really confirmed that including volunteer experiences on a resume makes candidates significantly more attractive to employers. And This doesn't surprise us because we know from countless employer surveys that around 75% or more say that adding volunteer work on a resume boosts that job applicant's chances on advancing to the next round or of being given the job offer. And so a few tips I would offer on this space is make sure that your volunteer experience on your resume is relevant and directly transferable to your target job or industry, and that it's timely, right? So if you're applying or you're trying to negotiate a switch into a new job space, I would highlight things from your volunteer experience, whether through Taproot or beyond, that are either directly in that new job space or functional area that you're trying to stretch into, or that highlight the really great cross-cultural communications qualities or collaboration qualities or project management qualities that you were able to gain from those skills-based volunteer opportunities. So even if it doesn't have the direct skill transference, what about those quote unquote soft skills that you could use to highlight and flesh out your resume, and make yourself, I know all of these hiring companies are using AI and those fancy search tools that identify keywords in the resumes. Help cater to that, and by really describing and fleshing out what you accomplished during your pro bono projects and highlighting all of the ways that you stretch your skills and use them as experiential learning opportunities. So feature volunteer work, but be relevant and specific about it. This leads me really well into the next slide here, which is strengthening skills. As we just touched on that when we were talking about the resume building aspects of skills base. And I would encourage everyone on the line to keep in mind that skills-based volunteerism is a great place to build out some of the background skills that make you a great leader, that make you a great team member and teammate. Volunteer experiences often include teamwork, communication, project or task leadership, problem solving, creativity, as you're trying to apply corporate skill sets into a nonprofit environment. That's going to take a lot of creativity, and other soft skills that are valuable in any professional setting, no matter what field you're moving into or remaining in. And so including them on the resume, you can showcase your ability to work effectively with others. And volunteering can also be a strategy to strengthen skills and competencies identified in a performance review or by a mentor, and build confidence in a really safe place outside of the company that you're currently at, giving yourself a chance to grow in an environment that's a little safer, a little kinder, and a little bit more nurturing. One thing that I would definitely call out here is that I don't recommend pro bono consulting as a place to learn functional skills for the first time. So I'll just spend an extra minute or so here. A really good example of this would be if a nonprofit has put out a request on Taproot for, I need someone who is experienced with marketing strategy to come provide recommendations for how we can create our marketing plan for 2024. If marketing is something that you're interested in, but you've never done before, while I do appreciate the act of raising your hand and saying, hey, I don't have any experience in this, but I would be interested in learning, pro bono isn't the best place for that type of hard skill development, because nonprofits are looking for someone that they can trust to independently be an expert on that area. So a nonprofit would be looking for someone, for that marketing planning example, to come in and say, all right, I have done marketing planning before. I have, XYZ strengths when it comes to leveraging marketing channels like PR and social and email and partnerships. And I'm going to use that perspective and provide you and be able to provide you with that expertise, and then execute this marketing plan for you in X number of weeks. And I'll be able to do so with relatively little onboarding or oversight from your part. Because nonprofits may not have anyone skilled in marketing who's able to oversee that volunteer and provide the mentorship or provide any guidance or training on that skill set. So if you're looking to develop a hard skill for the first time, I would highly recommend looking at online courses and other ways to actually build up that skill set academically before going to a nonprofit and saying, okay, I'm ready to volunteer this skill set. Pro bono is a place to donate demonstrated skills, not to build skills for the first time. So hopefully that makes sense for everyone. All right. I want to transition quickly and because I want to hand things off to Josh and make sure that he has a chance to fully dig into how you can actually start finding the right volunteer opportunities for you. But before you do so, I want to touch on something that is typically a hot topic in the event registration form, and it was no different for this one. And it's this question of, okay, I feel really confident that I'm skilled in these areas, but I've never worked with a nonprofit before. How do I know if my skills are even of interest or are valuable for nonprofits, and how do I translate them? And so I included a few tips on this slide, and you'll receive this slide deck as part of our follow-up materials for the event as well. And I'd really encourage you to continue to dig in on all of the great tips that are offered on each slide. But on this one in particular, I know that the idea of transitioning corporate expertise to the nonprofit sector can feel daunting. And so I would really recommend that you keep an open mind going into any kind of skills-based volunteer opportunity, and an open mind in a few ways. One, recognizing that you and the nonprofit partner are bringing really unique areas of expertise to the partnership. So be open to learning a lot from your nonprofit partner, learning a lot about that social issue, learning a lot about how really small, scrappy teams function when they don't have access to any budget, or they have access to really, really limited resources. So learning about the creative problem-solving processes that go on in nonprofit environments, and being open to teach and coach nonprofits on the area of your unique professional knowledge as well. And kind of same side of that coin, being open to listening and seeking understanding before immediately offering solutions. Don't just try and copy and paste what you and your corporate team of 20 might do when it comes to marketing strategy or CRM implementation or HR policies. Don't just think you can copy and paste that same thing into a smaller nonprofit environment. You need to make sure that you're really being human-centric in your approach to designing solutions to meet that specific nonprofit organization's need and their ability to implement your need after you step away from the organization, right? Making sure to involve your nonprofit partner in decision-making, being direct and communicative about recommendations and your needs and your expectations for what you want from the pro bono partnership. If you are doing pro bono because you need to build up your LinkedIn presence, or you need to fill in gaps in your resume, or you are looking for professional references for your next job search, then communicate that with your nonprofit partner and set that as an expectation of, here's what I'm going to need from you following this partnership with one another. All right, hopefully that all made sense. I am so happy to be passing things off to my wonderful colleague, Josh Grohl. I have to jump from today's event, but I'm so looking forward to checking in with Josh and Kristen later to hearing about all the other wonderful questions and conversations that you all were able to have after I jumped. Thank you, Josh, for carrying us forward.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. So like Kim said, I'm going to be commandeering the rest of the webinar today, but I want to talk a little bit about kind of the nitty gritty of, okay, what does this actually look like if you want to go about doing this? And really, you can go to taprootplus.org. It's up there on the sign up at the top of the ribbon there. I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go on there, start taking a look and teeing things up. You might have questions, as you sign up or go through the process that we might be able to answer at the Q&A at the end in real time. So like we've talked about, Taproot Plus is a nonprofit volunteer matchmaking platform. And it's really the front door to accessing services through our nonprofit, where you can actually start meeting other nonprofits in our network and linking up to do some skilled volunteerism. We have a virtual community of over 150,000 volunteers from the worlds of IT, business strategy, HR and leadership development, marketing, communications. The list kind of goes on. So like I said, we can walk through some of this together, but I want to just talk about, if you get started on Taproot Plus, what it actually looks like and some best practices for really the best ways to think about how you can give back with volunteer service. So the first step, obviously, is creating an account. You'll want to make sure, that you have your LinkedIn profile if you like your LinkedIn profile on hand. And when you create an account, we'll ask you to do a quick email confirmation as well. Automated notifications are sent for things like application status updates and interview confirmations with nonprofit partners. So be sure to use an email that you check regularly. And when creating an account, you'll be prompted to select your skills and add cause areas that you're interested in. Before applying for any volunteer opportunities, you'll have to add skills to your profile. There can be some uncertainty about translating professional experience into skill selection on Taproot Plus, but also to start, try breaking down your roles into maybe smaller component parts, even beyond the items listed in your kind of basic job description. It might help to approach skills from this perspective, where you say, is this a skill I would feel confident in using to support a nonprofit? Again, we recommend that volunteers have at least a few years of professional experience in a skill set that they want to share when they're thinking about what skills that you want to give back. And it's really important to think about, nonprofits are reaching out probably because they don't have this skill set on staff. So again, backing up what Kim was talking about earlier, nonprofits aren't necessarily going to be able to provide kind of on-the-job training to a new volunteer. And, pro bono's not the best place to break in new skill sets or learn on the job. So remember to, donate skills that you're really, really confident in as an expert. We'll also have you select cause areas that you're interested in, but we strongly encourage you to add or rather that's optional to do that, but we strongly encourage you to add that information in because it helps us tailor recommendations that fit your interests the best. You can update skills and cause areas at any time on the profile page of your Taproot Plus dashboard as well. So if you come back and want to expand your skill set maybe later down the road, you can do that. There's also going to be space to add your LinkedIn profile, like I mentioned before. That is also optional, but it is a great way that nonprofits can get to know you really, really quick if you reach out about a project. So, you can do that as well if you're comfortable sharing. We don't currently have the ability to allow volunteers to upload resumes to the Taproot Plus platform yet. So LinkedIn is a great alternative. File sharing on interfaces like this can be a little tricky, but we encourage you to update your LinkedIn presence and have it up there if you'd like as you create your account. So with your account set up, and if you are setting up an account right now, you can actually go to the marketplace itself and start perusing through opportunities. Once your account is set up, you can start searching for those opportunities. So in the chat, if you have looked for opportunities before, or maybe have some experience on Taproot Plus, feel free to share out any tips, or what kind of things you look for in a nonprofit when you search for nonprofits to help. But I want to take this moment to highlight something really important. Taproot Plus has basically two program options. There's kind of two paths you can go down. We call these each sessions and projects. Sessions are 1-hour consultations where skilled volunteers connect with nonprofits in need of creative brainstorming, project planning, or problem-solving assistance of some kind. With these sessions, there's not a concrete deliverable involved or kind of final finished product. It's just mostly a discussion and a consultation session that the nonprofit is going to have with a subject matter expert. Projects, on the other hand, are multi-week capacity building engagements that result in the creation of a specific deliverable or a finished product. We recommend that volunteers have the capacity to dedicate around 3 to 5 hours each week, and we typically see projects take between 2 to 10 weeks, respectively, given what the nature of your relationship with the nonprofit is like. The time commitment ultimately depends on your availability, the skills required, and the scope of the work, which is finalized and agreed upon by both parties during your kickoff of your project. You're both entering the partnership with a shared understanding of the intended outcome. So again, projects are multi-week engagements where you're going to be teaming up with a nonprofit a little more long-term. Sessions are usually 1-hour, one-off consultation sessions where you're doing brainstorming, diagnosing, troubleshooting, or the nonprofit might just want to pick the brain of a subject matter expert about a certain topic that they're not very knowledgeable in. You can get to the Browse Opportunities page from the top of the Taproot Plus homepage or on your dashboard. You'll see the Browse Opportunities button pretty much on every page on Taproot Plus, somewhere at the top. So if you're ever lost and you want to find the marketplace to look where there are sessions and project opportunities, just look at the top of the page. You'll see Browse Opportunities up there somewhere, and that'll take you to the actual marketplace. So you can actually see what it looks like. You can filter by sessions or projects. And you can also filter by skill category and issue area to narrow down options for projects or sessions that you would like to apply to. So let's say you found a session or project that feels like a really good fit, and you're ready to click that Apply Now button that you see next to it. The application process should only take a few minutes. It consists of 3 main steps. So first, completing the community agreement, which is a very kind of basic boilerplate. I feel confident that I have the skills necessary to complete this project. I'm ready to take on this need, so on and so forth. And then we'll ask you to provide a brief statement of interest. So think of this like a short kind of version of a cover letter detailing your skills and experience and why you're motivated to help this nonprofit and why you think you'd be a really good fit. And then we'll ask you to select your availability for a call with the nonprofit. So here's where sessions and projects start to really differ. Projects have kind of a screening call or interview phase, but sessions don't. So if you apply for a project and the nonprofit is interested in having a conversation to learn more about you and discuss their needs in a little more detail, they'll schedule a 30-minute interview based off of your availability. So we'll ask you to block off times that you're going to be available in the near future where you could have one of these calls. If you send your application to the nonprofit, they might actually, come back with a different set of times. But basically, you'll both agree on a block of 30 minutes where you'll be able to meet to discuss the project a little more in depth. If you apply for a session and the nonprofit wants to work with you on this session, they'll schedule the 1-hour consultation itself. So because it's such a short, discrete interaction, there isn't any additional interview step built in. For both sessions and projects, if a nonprofit schedules a call, you'll receive confirmation via email with details for accessing the conference line through your dashboard. You'll also have the opportunity to communicate directly via email with the nonprofit as well. So if there's any kind of materials that they're going to forward to you in prep for the call or something like that, you can see those in advance. And it never hurts to reach out in advance to just introduce yourself if you have time. So now I just want to cover sessions a little more in depth. So before the 1-hour consultation, we recommend doing a little research, obviously, about the nonprofit. Through your Taproot Plus dashboard, you can access links to the organization's website. They have one, and mission statement. A little extra Googling never hurts if you want to skim their webpage, social media presence, to really get a good idea of their issue area and mission. Because you know exactly what kind of advice a nonprofit is looking for ahead of time, you can go into a session with advice or discovery questions prepared in advance. Having a list of exploratory questions ready to work with will help you immediately clarify your understanding of their organizational challenge. A 60-minute, one-on-one consulting session can go by pretty quick, so you'll want to try and maximize the amount of knowledge you can share with the nonprofit in that time frame. You are not committed to working with the nonprofit following the session, so save time at the end of your call to talk about how they might be able to carry your recommendations forward. It may mean that they have to connect with additional Taproot Plus volunteers, and that's perfectly fine. If you mesh well with the nonprofit and the two of you actually want to expand the session into something bigger, like maybe a multi-week capacity building project, you're completely welcome to do that. Reach out to us at the help desk, which we'll share for information about kind of at the end here, and just let us know. Our team can kind of support you logging that as an official project that you'll have on your dashboard if you would like to do that. So really quickly, I just want to share a few examples of what potential sessions outcomes look like here. So as you can see, none of these result in concrete deliverables in the way projects do. But a 1-hour consultation session is really just a discussion where you as the expert share thoughts and recommendations about specific questions from a nonprofit. Sessions can be really a great introduction for anyone new to skills-based volunteering. They're really flexible and short, and that gives you an option that maybe fits more easily into your schedule. They're narrowly focused and time-bound, and they give volunteers a better sense of what working with a nonprofit is like rather than immediately jumping into a long-term partnership. Now I want to dive into projects a little more in depth as we wrap up here. So keep in mind, if you see a project listed on the site and it grabs your attention, but you're not totally sure if you're the exact right fit, that's perfectly fine. The project descriptions on Taproot Plus are really so you can get your foot in the proverbial door with the nonprofit and plan a conversation with them that digs a little bit deeper into their project need. If you're not completely sure if it's a good fit, that's exactly what that initial kind of screening call is for. So we encourage you to apply anyway. Like we mentioned earlier, if you really feel that spark, be willing to keep the door open for a discussion. So prior to the call, similarly for sessions, try and visit their website to do some initial research and take another look at their project and jot down anything specific you want clarification on. There are a few questions we encourage volunteers to ask during this original kind of screening call. One, what's your organization all about? Hear their elevator pitch, whatever it might be. This additional context on top of your own research about their work will help you decide if the mission is in line with your own interests. Two, what's going to be in scope for this project and what's not? So nailing down the specifics of the project is vital to ensure it all comes together. Ask the organization to lay out exactly what they're hoping to accomplish with you, and begin kind of segmenting out, what the actual scope and kind of final product is really going to look like, what it will and will not include. 3, do you have a project timeline in mind is a very, very important question. This question helps both of you manage expectations right from the get-go. So you'll want to ask about the urgency and flexibility of the project and try and be as transparent as possible with your own availability and other commitments. It's also a great time to share your communications preferences and how many hours you expect to be able to volunteer per week. So number 4, you're also going to want to ask, how is your organization going to use this project outcome? So asking how they intend to use the work you complete together gives you a clearer perspective on the project itself. Asking may also encourage them to form and finalize a implementation plan to ensure that your finished product is used instead of shelved or, collecting dust as a paperweight. You might discover that the nonprofit actually isn't prepared to start a project because they should have other pieces in place first. If that happens, tap into your expertise to redirect them and help them understand the next steps they should be taking instead. By setting them up for success here and ensuring they don't undertake a project that doesn't actually meet their needs at this time, you are providing a valuable service to them by saving them time and frustration down the road. Remember, you're the subject matter expert, so if you see any glaring red flags involving the nonprofit's readiness to take on a project, let them know. They might not actually know that they need to have X, Y, and Z in place first before taking this on. If it doesn't seem like it actually will be a good fit after you have this initial call, that's perfectly fine. Not every project you express interest in might necessarily be a great fit. You can withdraw your application. You'll have the opportunity, to let the nonprofit know why. And hopping on one of these interview calls for a project does not mean you are obligated or locked in to work with them. However, if the call goes well and there's a high level of confidence, you can match with the nonprofit in the Taproot Plus system, and the project will be officially matched as a Taproot Plus project. So a quick example here of some multi-week project outcomes that you can expect to see listed on Taproot Plus. Again, the nonprofit with these multi-week projects will be walking away with a tangible outcome that will help build their capacity in some way. If a nonprofit needs in-depth support to create some kind of resource from scratch rather than just feedback or quick recommendations, a multi-week project is the right fit for their needs. This allows enough time for challenges to be thoroughly addressed. So for example, here, right up at the top, a nonprofit may need help setting up an accounting system or ask for training on how to use it so they can maintain it on their own going forward. Or maybe the organization wants to start pursuing grants and other funding opportunities, but they feel they're not able to convey their purpose and their story clearly. Projects provide foundational building blocks that nonprofits can continue to use and benefit from beyond the length of the partnership itself. So this is all about capacity building. So these are just a few examples of what we're talking about when we talk about these multi-week projects that you can engage on with nonprofits. So that is really it in terms of the basics we wanted to address during our presentation today. But like I said, I wanted to make sure that we have some time at the end for Q&A. But also, if you're like me and you think of like amazing questions at 1 a.m. way after the presentation is over, you can reach out to us at help@taprootplus.org as well. We will definitely be available. We are also going to be sending a follow-up message with some resources in it to everyone who registered for this webinar today as well. So if you want to forward that over to colleagues or people who might be interested, you can do that as well. But I know we've gotten some good questions that have come in. So I want to just take a few minutes to answer those on air. We are going to be keeping a copy of the transcription of the recording itself and the chat. So if we, for some reason, miss you or don't answer your question, we will try and reach out to you. And again, we'll be in touch. So a really great question we've just gotten in is, if a nonprofit's project spans more than one need, are there multiple people assigned to a project or able to work on a project? This is a really good question, and I want to give you some insight into kind of what our process is when a nonprofit posts one of these projects. So all the projects that are posted to the marketplace are actually reviewed and vetted by members of Taproot staff. Sessions go up immediately, but for projects, we are actually vetting those projects to make sure that there is kind of a core deliverable involved, and that core deliverable revolves ideally around one skill set. Now, that means that the deliverable might have, some more than one piece to it. So, for example, in that accounting setup, the final scope of the project could be something like setting up the accounting system, but also there's going to be a training component to that deliverable. So there's two pieces to that deliverable, but again, they all kind of involve that one central core skill set. If a nonprofit brings us a project that is a little more broad than we'd like, and involves several different skill sets, for example, if they're designing their first annual report, they're like, we need help designing this annual report. We'd probably actually reach back out to that nonprofit and say, okay, For the annual report, you might want to actually break that down into a graphic design project. And then we'd encourage them to also post a messaging and copywriting project, because we'd let them know, the person who's doing the graphic design for your annual report might not actually have the copywriting and messaging skill set to get like that copy that's going to go in your annual report down. So we do vet those projects to make sure that there is one single core skill set, because most Taproot Plus engagements are one-on-one engagements with a skilled volunteer. Nonprofits do have the option, if they want, of bringing more than one volunteer onto a project, but for the vast majority of projects, these are one-on-one engagements. Another great question, kind of a two-parter, kind of details about, what happens when you do actually match on a project with a nonprofit. So how the relationship is managed, and the second part of this question is kind of about liability and things like that. The first part of the question is really Taproot Plus is coming in as a sourcing platform, a matchmaking platform. To put it in this terminology, we are technically a third party. So we're trying to link you up together. The good thing about this is you have a lot of autonomy with your nonprofit partner about how you want to manage the project. So in terms of management, both you and the nonprofit are kind of co-managing the project. We do have resources built into our system. So if you do match on a project, we actually have a whole pro bono project guide that is kind of a crash course in pro bono project management that can help you structure the engagement. Both the nonprofit and the skilled volunteer get that on every project they're matched with. We don't provide in-house management for these projects. But again, you do have a lot of autonomy over how you want to manage the project. So keep that in mind, that there is, there's not structure, from the top down coming from us, but you have a lot of freedom over, the timeline and how you all are communicating with each other. In terms of liability, this was a really great question. I know some people, especially who are freelancers, have their kind of own, liability or insurance program structured out. For most skilled volunteer engagements, at least in my experience, I haven't seen a lot of skilled volunteers use this because they are volunteer engagements. But what we do see is a lot of times nonprofits will have the skilled volunteer sign a confidentiality agreement or a non-disclosure agreement of some kind. This is in particular something that comes in with human resources related projects, or if, the nonprofit works in kind of a very sensitive area where they need to keep information that might be healthcare information or data about their beneficiaries kind of under wraps. They're working with very sensitive data. So for example, if you're working with a nonprofit that runs like a domestic violence shelter or something like that, they might have you, as a matter of course, sign a confidentiality agreement or an NDA. We actually have a sample confidentiality agreement that appears as part of that cache of resources when you do match on a project. If you want to cover yourself with any other type of liability, that is up to you. But that's a very, very great question. And it is very normal, I think, for a volunteer interactions to be structured with some kind of NDA or confidentiality agreement. And we encourage nonprofits to look at that. Oftentimes, we have a boilerplate one we give them, but they have their own in-house version as well. So another great question. Does Taproot measure success for its volunteer and nonprofit matching engagements? If so, how? Yeah, so that's a great question. We do actually follow up initially after a project is reported as complete. And then we also have a 6-month follow-up with the nonprofit to see if they are actually using the deliverable. So initially, if a project is reported as complete, you'll get the post-project survey which we'll ask you about, are you satisfied with what you've created? Do you think this nonprofit is a great utilizer pro bono? So that's how we get data about how the project went. We are also going to be asking for just updates on the project while the project is still listed as matched. So you'll get regular email check-ins from us saying, hey, if things are going well, great. You can just kind of click the things are going well button. If something's happening, or maybe, you've lost touch with your nonprofit or something like that, you can reach out to us. We can always help smooth over communications issues or things like that. If something happens, life happens and you need to disengage from the project, you can also let us know, and we can work with that nonprofit to see, if they want to relist the project or something like that. So we're asking you for check-ins throughout, and then we do some post-project follow-ups to measure the success of the engagement as well. So that's a great question. But this 6-month follow-up, we're going to ask the nonprofit, are you using this deliverable? Is it making a difference? And things like that. But yeah, so in terms of how we're actually measuring the success of engagements, that's primarily how we do it. Those surveys are pretty short, but that data really, really, really helps us better understand, our own impact as well. I know we're a little over time, and so a lot of people have to jump, but I wanted to make sure to stay on the line to get all of those questions answered. But if there aren't any other questions, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and thank you all for being here. A big thanks to Kim for co-leading and setting up this presentation. I know she had to jump, unfortunately, but big thanks to her. We are going to be sending you an email follow-up. So for some reason, we didn't get to your question on air, feel free to ping us there. We are going to be reviewing the chat as well to make sure to follow up with you individually if we can. But thank you all again so much for your time. There's been a lot of great activity in the chat and networking. We'd love to see that. And yeah, I hope we've at least inspired you to take a look at this, tell your friends and coworkers and people in your network about it. And as we like to say here, we hope to see you online. Have a good rest of your Tuesday.